Okay, we're going to write quadratic equations from vertex and intercept form. Now, what you're going to need to remember when we write a quadratic equation from vertex form is the general formula for vertex form, which was y equals a times the binomial x minus h quantity squared plus k. And if you'll remember, the vertex was at h comma k, and that's going to be important. Let's just make a note here. All you need to write from vertex form is the vertex and one point on the parabola. You need these two things. If you have those two things, you can easily write a quadratic function in vertex form. The other form we're going to do in this video is intercept form, which you need to recall is the y equals a times x minus p times x minus q. Now, if you're going to write it from intercept form, you need the intercepts, which are going to be at p comma 0 and q comma 0 and another point on the line. Oops, can't spell. How about let's do another point on the parabola. So if you have your intercepts and another point on the parabola, we're going to be good to go from intercept form. Let's look at example 1. So example 1, let's write the equation. Write the equation in vertex form if I know the following. I know the vertex is going to be at the coordinate 2, -3, 2, -3, and it's got a point on the parabola of, let's do 4 comma 1. 4 comma 1. Now, remember, all you need for vertex form is this vertex and a point, and we are in business. So what I like to do is start with the general form of vertex form. It's y equals a, then x minus h squared plus k. Now, I know right off the bat, if my vertex is at 2 comma 3, or excuse me, 2 -3 rather, they're giving me h and k on a silver platter. I know exactly what to plug in for h and k, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to rewrite this as y equals a times x minus the h value of 2, square it, and then add the k value -3 to it. And so all we need to find now is the a value, right? In order to get the a value, we need to utilize that second coordinate right here, that 4, 1. Now, if I know I have the coordinate 4 comma 1, I know that that x value, when I plug in x is 4 and when I plug in the y value 1, that should satisfy this equation and make it true. So, oops, I want to plug in 4 for x and 1 for y in this revised equation and solve for a. So let's go ahead and do that. If I substitute a 1 in for y, I'm going to get 1 equals a times, now x is really 4, so I'm going to do 4 minus 2 in parentheses squared, and then plus a -3 is just -3. Alright, so I'm going to have 1 equals a, 4 minus 2 is really 2, and then I'm going to square it, take away 3. Order of operations would say square the 2, right? So I'm going to have 1 equals, this is going to be really a times 4, or 4a, if you like, minus 3. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides. If I do, I'm going to get 4 equals 4a, and if I divide by 4 to get a alone, I get 1 for a. Guys, I know my equation now. Let's go back to this guy and replace the a with a 1. So I'm going to have y equals 1 times x minus 2 squared minus 3. Now you know that we really don't need to write the 1 there. So the best way of writing this would just be y equals x minus 2 squared minus 3. You'll notice it does have the vertex of positive 2, negative 3, which is what was given. And if we substitute it in a 4, subtracted 2, we get 2 squared, which would be 4, and 4 minus 3 is 1, which matches that other given point. So we have the right solution. Let's do an example from Intercept Form. Let's call this one Example 2. Okay, Example 2. Let's write in Intercept Form the equation of the parabola that goes through the following zeros. Now remember, if it gives you the zeros, that's the same thing as saying the x-intercepts. And that's what we need if we're going to be doing intercept form. So if I give you the following zeros at negative 2 comma 0 and let's say 3 comma 0. So it has these intercepts and it goes through the point negative 1 comma 2. Negative 1 comma 2. So if we have intercept form, recall that's going to be y equals a, then an x minus p, in parentheses, an x minus q. It's basically just the factored form of a quadratic. Now, if we know the zeros, they're giving you the values of p and q to substitute in. So you need to realize that based on that 0, my p value equals negative 2, and based on 3, 0, my q value is positive 3. I'm going to substitute in the values of p and q into the form, or into intercept form, and I'm going to get y equals a, parentheses, x minus negative 2, and x minus 3. 3. Now, be careful here. If I substitute a negative, I'm going to have a double negative. This is really x plus 2. Common mistake students make is forgetting that the double negative makes a positive. Now, similar to the last problem we did vertex form, I'm all good to go except for I have no idea what that a value is. Once again, that is where that extra coordinate comes into play. If I know that this parabola will go through the coordinate negative 1, 2, I know that if I plug in negative 1 for x and positive 2 for y into this equation, it will be true. So I can solve for a if I do that. Let's substitute a 2 in for y, and I get 2 equals a. I don't know what that is. Now remember, x is really negative 1, so I'm going to put a negative 1 plus 2, and then over here for x is going to be a negative 1 as well, negative 1 minus 3. So I get 2 equals a, then negative 1 plus 2 is really positive 1, negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4. So this becomes 2 equals a times 1 times negative 4. Isn't that just negative 4 times a? If you divide 2 by a negative 4, it reduces to negative 1/2. That is my a value. So, taking this equation, which had my intercepts plugged in, but I just didn't have my a value, I can now substitute in what I know is my a value. It's y equals negative 1/2 of x plus 2 and x minus 3. This is my equation in intercept form. Double check your zeros. I should have a 0 at negative 2 and a 0 at positive 3, which does match what was given here. And my a value is negative 1/2. Now, they don't give me the a value, but if I were to plug in negative 1 for x, this would be a negative 1 and this would be a negative 1. I'd have negative 1 plus 2 is 1 times negative 1 minus 3, that's negative 4. So if I do 1 times negative 4, that's negative 4 times negative 1/2. I think I get 2, which is that y value. So we have the right intercept form. Thanks for watching.